Metacognition and Metacognitive Classroom, presented by Julie Lott, Paulette Kelly, and Deborah Smith. According to Bon Christiani and Bon Christiani in our text, Developing Mindful Students, skillful thinkers, thoughtful schools is using metacognition. They are not just completing a task to do it, they are thinking about what they are learning, evaluating what they are learning, making sure they know what they are learning, and also why. This allows the students to become skillful and independent learners. The more we understand how thinking works and how we learn and how we solve problems, the better we will be able to adjust our practices to make our students more successful. It will be a classroom full of inquiry. This will include effective questioning, interactive learning, and thoughtful assessments. There will be students learning how taking notes effectively work, and students will be thinking about their thinking. It is not enough for the students to use these problem-solving skills in one type of environment or one class. The students must use these skills in every aspect of their academics and in life in order to develop these lifelong learning skills to become successful. A lot of times the students do not realize skills and techniques they have learned and used in one academic class can also be used in another academic class. This is something that has to be taught because it is not obvious to some students.
Dewey with progressivism focused on students learning through their senses, discovering things for themselves, and vary the activities students are given. The students should work in cooperation and not competition. Social reconstruction is thinking critically, making meaning, using critical inquiry, and as a pedagogical technique to get them to think critically about discussions and controversial materials. Students should be able to problem solve and use inquiry-based approaches. Plato, a Greek philosopher, is a foundational figure for Western science, philosophy, and mathematics. He set high standards for those that studied with him and those who continued the development of curriculum. Thinking about thinking goes back to Plato, who coined this phrase, about thinking. John Locke mentioned the concept of children reflecting on their own thinking process, which is the basis of metacognition. Reading furnishes the mind only with materials of knowledge. It is thinking what makes what we read ours. John Flavel made the word metacognition popular in the 1970s as the president of the APA's Division of Developmental Psychology. His works include writing a book on children's cognitive development titled The Developmental Psychology of Jean Piaget in 1963.
These are just a few of the advantages to metacognition. When students are taught how to think about what they are doing and why they are doing it, the learning becomes more effective and more meaningful to them. The students can help themselves by adapting their learning in other content areas and will have a better chance of retaining the knowledge instead of losing it. They will learn how to connect their learning to other things in their life as well. There are some disadvantages, however. The advantages well outweigh the disadvantages for metacognition. Some students may not have the skills necessary to think about their thinking. They have not been taught the skills they need or are unable to use them effectively. Some may not understand it well enough to know when they need to use it in other areas of their life. Others could just not be confident enough or don't know how to use it. Most of these disadvantages could be fixed or at least lessened by better instruction on the metacognition skills.
Confucius said, "A man who has committed a mistake and doesn't correct it is committing another mistake." If we don't learn from our mistakes or our successes, we will always be starting from scratch. This is why it's essential to teach metacognition and how to use it to improve learning. Students need to be taught how to think about their thinking in order to learn from their mistakes and make the necessary adjustments so that they will be able to meet learning targets. Students must reflect on their learning so they can realize what makes them succeed and what happens when they fail. Metacognition needs to be directly taught and modeled. One teacher demonstrated this simply by throwing balled-up paper at a trash can and analyzing what was happening aloud. First, he threw the paper too far to the left. Then he stated to the class that the paper had gone too far to the left, so he would adjust his throw to the right. He threw again, and the paper was on target but landed short. He then analyzed aloud that he would have to throw harder, so in order to do that, he would use an underhand throw. Then he threw 10 paper balls in a row and never missed. After this, he asked the students questions about what he had done and compared it to what they should do when they were completing work. There are 2 aspects to metacognition that students must become familiar with: reflection thinking about what we know, and self-regulation managing how we go about learning so that they will be able to acquire specific strategies to guide their own learning. These metacognitive strategies help us to become more powerful learners by helping us find information, evaluate the need for different resources, and understand when to apply different approaches to our learning. Students must be given the time to reflect on their learning and ask themselves questions so that they're developing their own set of metacognitive strategies. Then they will be able to plan their learning. One good way to do this is to keep a learning journal to monitor their thinking. Put the student in the driver's seat for their own learning. Sometimes they need to apply brakes and review a reading passage, or step on the gas and jot down notes for an essay, but always keep our brain moving in the best lane for reaching a goal. When students can use metacognition, they will be able to understand how they learn and express this to their teacher so that he can provide them with appropriate differentiation. They can express that they find it easier to learn math than reading, or that when information is put to music, it is easier for them to retain. Being able to know this information about how you learn will help students do the necessary things to achieve goals. If students know, they will understand the information better if they draw a picture. Then they will have that tool to use when needed. Teachers will also know how to provide choices for differentiation that meet the needs of the students. One way to teach metacognition is through the use of wrappers. This is a pre or post activity centered around a piece of pre-existing work, such as a lecture, homework, or test. An example of using a wrapper is prior to solving a problem, decide on a strategy you might try. Other ways teachers can promote metacognition is through the use of reading journals, literature, think-alouds, mind maps, and specific content strategies. Questioning also will help to develop metacognition. These questions can be asked by the teacher, peers, or the student himself. Metacognition thinking stems such as, I'm wondering, I'm thinking, or I'm noticing are good starters for having students practice metacognition. Providing students with these skills will give them the tools they need to take control of their learning. The direct teaching of metacognition should be tied into daily practice. Research shows that students that use metacognitive strategies are higher achievers.
My goal falls in line with my school's mission statement. I want to nurture and develop successful lifelong learners. This can be accomplished by knowing my students and adapting my teaching techniques to their needs, whether it be allowing them to work in groups, teaching them the metacognitive skills, or using multiple summative assessments in order to guide my instruction. If I teach them how to think, they will remember how to think long after they have lost the knowledge about the rock cycle I teach them.
A quality student-centered education will embody student achievement on any level. Active learning and engagement of students is a priority as I strive to challenge my students with curriculum that promotes their individual thinking skills. Ongoing professional development enhances a teacher's ability in making a difference in the classroom, which leads to improved student achievement. I will always believe that all students can learn.
My philosophy on teaching is providing all children with the education that I would want for my own. Lessons should be engaging, hands-on, and fun. The required material or standards-based material should be presented in a manner that students will find enjoyable. The teacher should present this material in a variety of formats so that the learning style of each individual child can be met. Of the 4 children that you see in the pictures, you will find the following labels. 3 are academically gifted, 2 are artistically gifted, 2 have specific learning disabilities, and 1 has extreme anxiety and worries about everything in school and life. However, with the right support and scaffolding of activities, each one of them will be able to learn to their fullest potential. Differentiation for content, process, and product should be key as we plan lessons. Formative assessments should be used throughout the learning progression in order to guide instruction so that the teacher can make sure that all students obtain mastery of the set learning goals. Incorporating the arts, integrating curriculum, providing real-world problem-solving opportunities are some ways to engage students in their learning. All of this should take place in a safe, organized environment.
Metacognition. Another big fancy word that I don't know anything about. Well, it's actually not that difficult. See, metacognition is just thinking about thinking. So you're thinking about what you're thinking about while you're thinking. Okay, so that's a lot of thinking. What if we just narrowed it down to thinking about something that needs to get done, and then thinking about, well, what was the best way for me to get there, especially for doing stuff in school. A strategy in class could be asking yourself questions like, how am I doing? Does this make sense? Can I teach it? And change things if you're off track. Another way to think about it is, are you doing things differently depending on the task or subject? Or are you trying to do the exact same thing over and over, hoping you'll get the right results, getting really frustrated, and wonder why your marks aren't as good as you want them to be? So, part of metacognition is understanding how your brain works and taking more control of your learning. Knowing exactly what works and what is hard for you can become your strategies that you can use when you're faced with a challenge. Then you'll know exactly how, when, and why you're doing what you're doing. So ask yourself, do you like listening, or looking at things to learn, or writing things down, or typing them up, or working during the day, or at nighttime? Or maybe you work better in a certain environment. Whatever you find works, use it. So before you even start, you could ask yourself, why am I doing this? What do I already know that will help me do this? What do I want it to look like once I'm done? What should I do first? And how much time do I even have to do all this? While you're doing it, you could ask, how am I doing? Am I on the right track? How should I keep going? Am I even getting close to my goal? Am I spending the right amount of time? What do I need to do if I don't get it? When you're done, you can ask yourself, how well did I do? Did I do better or worse than I thought? What kind of things could I have done differently? And do I need to go back and fill in any blanks? So, what strategies will work for you? Think it through. And soon, you'll be well on your way to improving your learning. Oh, and you don't have to do all this alone either.